2000, 2016. Okay, so let us begin with the homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Okay, good morning, everybody. Okay, I'll stand. So today we will be taking Sutta number 148 in the middle length discourses. So you could see we're really pulling into the Grand Central Station now, coming to the end of our journey. Okay, so this sutta is called the Chachakka Sutta, which means the 6 sets of 6. In the Pali language, the word cha means 6. And then when you add a ka to the end of a number, it means a group of that number. So Panchaka, what is Panchaka? Right, it's a group of 5. So sometimes the commentaries will speak about the Kanda Panchaka. Instead of saying the Panchakanda, the 5 aggregates, it'll be the Kanda Panchaka, the group of 5 aggregates. Chatuka is what? Right. Did you say that, Barbara? Oh. It's a group of 4. Tika is what? Group of 3, right. We almost have something like that in English? Troika? Okay, so this is, the cha is 6, and chakka is a group of 6. And why this sutta has that title, that we will see as we go into it. Okay, the Buddha opens the sutta in a rather unusual way. Usually he'll just address the bhikkhus and say, "Oh monks," then he'll say, "I'm going to teach you this," or "I'm going to teach you that." But here I think he wants to emphasize the importance of this discourse by using this opening declaration. So he says, "Bhikkhus and monks, I shall teach you the Dhamma that is good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end, with the right meaning and the right phrasing. I shall reveal a holy life that is utterly perfect and pure." So this is the way in many other discourses when the passage is introducing how the Buddha appears in the world, then it will use this formula to describe how he presents his teaching. But here the Buddha himself is using it to describe the teaching that he's going to give in this sutta. So this, as I said before, it sort of highlights or underscores the importance and the value of this sutta. And so he says, "I shall reveal a holy life or spiritual life that is utterly perfect and pure." And then he identifies what that particular Dhamma is that he's going to be teaching. and that is the 6 sets of 6, the Chachakka. Okay, so he begins, as he often does, first with a kind of what I call the synopsis, just like the table of contents of what he's going to expound. So he says the 6 internal sense bases should be understood, the 6 external sense bases, the 6 classes or types of consciousness, the 6 types of contact, the 6 types of feeling, the 6 classes or types of craving should be understood. Okay, so that is the outline, the summary of the presentation. And now comes the udesa, the nidesa, or vibhanga, the analysis of the outline. So he says, and a lot of these items are going to be familiar to us already because we've come across them in the last few suttas. So he says the 6 internal bases should be understood. So what is the meaning of this? Then he explains that there are these 6 internal sense bases, the eye base, ear base, nose base, tongue base, body body base, and mind base. So these are sometimes called the 6 internal sense bases, or the 6 sense faculties. Strictly speaking, they're not exactly identical with the gross sense organ, but rather, for example, what is called the eye base is not the eye that you see when you look in the mirror, but it's a sensitive type of material substance located within the eye that is receptive to light and colors and forms and shapes. In other words, in modern terms, we might think of it as the rods and cones. Any ophthalmologists in the room? Good, I don't have to be rigorously scientific. Okay, so the eye base is the subtle substance located within the eye that is sensitive to colors, lights, forms, shapes. The ear base, again, is not this floppy thing, these that are out here, but located within the inner ear, there's a kind of substance that is sensitive to sounds. The nose base is a kind of subtle substance. It's not this protuberance out here, but somewhere deep up here, there's a kind of subtle substance which is sensitive to odors and fragrances. That is the nose base. And the tongue base, again, it's a substance located on the tongue, maybe the taste buds, we would call them, which are receptive to flavors. The body base, it's something which is spread out over the body, which is sensitive to tactile sensations. And the mind base is not the brain, it's not a physical organ, but we could think of it as the organ of thought, conceptualization, judgments, assessments, conceptual formulations, and so on. Okay, so these are the 6 internal sense bases, and then their counterparts are the 6 external bases, or the 6 types of objects that correspond to the 6 internal sense bases. So we have visible forms correspond to the eye, sounds to the ear, odors to the nose, flavors to the tongue, textures to the body. Wow, that's a good word. We've always been using tangible objects, tactile objects. Textures is a very good, simple word. And then corresponding to the mind base, there is the class of mental objects. You call these concepts, ideas, thoughts, emotions, reflections, everything that takes place internally in the processing of information is the object of the mind base. Okay, then we come to the 6 classes of consciousness. And it's interesting the way the sutta is laying this, the Buddha is laying this out in the sutta. Instead of just enumerating the 6 types of consciousness, he shows how each type of consciousness arises in dependence upon a particular internal sense base and a particular external sense base. So this is why we call these sense bases bases, or to use the Pali word, ayatana. They're ayatanas because they are the bases for consciousness. And so here the sutta says that dependent upon the I and forms, I consciousness arises. So the I and the forms are conditions for the arising of I consciousness. The function of I consciousness is to perceive or to cognize visible forms. And in order to cognize visible forms, I consciousness by itself is helpless. In order to cognize forms, it needs to stand upon a base. And that base is the I, the sensitive I. And the I and forms are both conditions for I consciousness, but they are conditions in different ways. Does anybody remember our Abhidhamma retreat last year? We spoke about conditional relations. Okay, the visible forms are a condition for I consciousness. As what kind of condition? No. I think I heard it in the back. Say again. Contact? No. No. Again? Try again. Come on. At least one person has to say it, otherwise I dismiss the class today. In what way are the visible forms a condition for I consciousness? Amongst the different conditions that we mentioned, that I mentioned in the Abhidhamma retreat. Bowe. Speak up. Condition? What kind of condition? Dependence is just another word for condition. Not quite. We have to know that 24 conditions. No. Okay. Mentality, materiality. Not quite. There's a very specific type of condition. Come on, Bowie. Okay, there it is. You're saved. It's object condition. The I is a condition for consciousness in what way? Again, very specific word. No. Particular type of condition? No. Root condition? No. I give you a hint. A professor at a university is a member of what? Okay. Now it's coming left and right. The faculty condition. So visible forms are the object condition. The I is the faculty condition. It's also the support condition, various other types of conditions, but the most important one, the most obvious one, is that it's the faculty condition. So we have the 6 external bases are the 6 objects, the 6 internal bases are the 6 faculties. And then in dependence on object and faculty, the respective type of consciousness arises. But as I've explained a number of times in the past, in the case of mind consciousness, it gets a little different because each of the 5 types of sense consciousness can have only one object. The I consciousness, you can be playing the most beautiful Mozart concertos. The I consciousness, unless it looks at the score or the record label, it has no idea what's going on. Nose consciousness can't smell the concerto. Tongue consciousness can't taste it. Only the ear consciousness can hear it. But in the case of the mind consciousness, that can take all objects as its domain. So the I consciousness, the mind consciousness takes the visible forms as its domain. So the way I recognize, okay, Barbara's jacket and CU's, we call this a sweatshirt, as both being blue. Okay, what identifies the same color, it's mind consciousness. The I consciousness just takes in the impression of the color, but the mind consciousness distinguishes, they're both blue. Or is that really a blue or a... Yeah. Well, excuse the... Anyway, it's the mind consciousness that looked more closely and saw green, not quite blue. Okay, so mind consciousness does a lot of work. It turns the whole visual field into something that's meaningful. The I consciousness is just like, in a way you say it's stupid like a camera. The camera can take in the most beautiful scenes, but the camera has no idea what it's photographing. But it's when we look at the picture, that is when we say, That's a beautiful photograph of the lake at Huangyan Monastery. That's a photograph of a group of school children playing baseball. That's a photograph of yeah, of my my college graduating class. Okay, so the mind consciousness turns all of these sensory domains into whatever we call spheres of meaning, spheres of significance. When we listen to a piece of music, just the ear consciousness just picks up the sounds, the notes, but it has no idea what these notes signify. But the mind consciousness sort of merges one note to the next and distinguishes, that's the Mozart concerto. That's the Rolling Stones. That's about the peak limit of where my knowledge of pop music ends. And they're a couple of years older than I am. Who are the latest? Taylor Swift, Beyonce. Okay, so ear consciousness distinguishes that. Tongue consciousness, we could eat anything, but we don't know whether it's an Indian curry, a Chinese tofu dish, Italian pizza. The tongue consciousness will take in all of the taste, but it can't identify. But it's the mind consciousness that identifies. Okay, so now we've come through the 18, what are called the 18 elements. And now we're going to go further. And it's interesting the way the Buddha sort of takes this in a sequence, not just laying out the different classes, but he builds up in a sequence. And at the end, we'll see where the sequence has been heading. So he comes in with next the 6 classes of contact should be understood. So now we come to contact. And contact means, the way it's expressed in the text often, it's said to be the coming together of 3 things, of the object, the sense faculty, and consciousness. So it said, Tinang Sangati Paso Vuchati. So the meeting of the 3 is called contact. But the way I understand contact, not simply the meeting of the 3, but the meeting takes place in a particular way. The way I see it is that it's consciousness meeting the object through the sense faculty, or the sense object encountering consciousness through the sense faculty. So the sense faculty is the door. Sometimes they're called the doors, the 6 sense doors. The doors through which mind or consciousness is able to meet the object. So we bring in the object through the door and say, visible form, meet eye consciousness. Eye consciousness, meet form. They shake hands, and that's contact. Sound comes in through the ear, so we say, ear consciousness, meet the sound meet the ear consciousness. They shake hands, and that's contact. And so here we could see the way the Buddha lays this out in a kind of evolving sequence. Dependent on the eye and forms, eye consciousness arises. The meeting of the 3 is contact. Then dependent on the ear and sounds, and so on, so on. Dependent on the mind and mind objects. mind consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact. Okay, so it was reference to this that it was said the 6 classes of consciousness should be understood. So that's the 4th chakra, the 4th set of 6. Now we come to the 5th, and this is the feeling. Because feeling arises dependent on contact. Whenever consciousness encounters any object through any sense faculty, along with that contact, a feeling arises. Often the feeling is very subtle, very fleeting, so that we hardly even aware of it. You know, as I've been speaking here, you ask me, what are you feeling? Pleasure, pain? You know, I'm not even aware because my mind is completely engaged in speaking. But even while I'm speaking, every moment there's a feeling, sometimes a little pleasure, sometimes a little pain, and sometimes just a neutral feeling. And so these feelings are always occurring because every moment there's a new contact taking place and a new feeling that arises dependent on that contact. And so one of the things that happens as one develops the practice of mindfulness meditation is that one starts to become aware of the feelings arising at what I call subtler and subtler levels. And so where it seems that we're normally just passing through a phase of just bland, neutral experience, but by attending mindfully and very attentively, one could see a moment of pleasure, a moment of joy, a moment of pain. And then as maybe if one is sitting for a long time, then the pain starts to increase in the legs or the back. And then if one starts to attend even closely to that pain, one sees that it's not a solid mass, but just the succession of moments of pain arising and passing, dependent upon particular types of contact. Okay, and then through each of the sense bases, dependent with contact as condition, there is feeling. And so we have feeling arisen through eye contact, feeling arisen through ear contact, and so on, till we have feeling arisen through mind contact. So that's the 5th set of 6. Then we come to the 6th set of 6, and that is the 6 classes of craving. And so here the text pulls in, it doesn't just enumerate the 6 types of craving, but it pulls in everything that has come before. Ooh. It's just that my recorder I saw ran out of power, but fortunately another one. Okay, so now we have the 6 classes of craving again, which is, they're not simply enumerated, but they're brought in at the end of the series of terms. So we have we have dependent on the I and forms, I consciousness arises. The meeting of the 3 is contact. With contact as condition, there is feeling. With feeling as condition, there is craving. Does this remind anybody of anything that they might have seen previously? Yeah, exactly. So we have here a kind of segment or sector from the formula, the 12-factored formula of paticca samuppada, dependent origination. But instead of starting with from ignorance up through contact. It starts from immediate sense experience, seeing a form with the eye, the contact takes place, the feeling takes place, then conditioned by that feeling, craving arises. And we know that from the Four Noble Truths that craving is the origin of dukkha, of suffering. Okay, so this pattern is played out according to all of the six sense bases. And so we have 6 types of craving. And that is the 6th set of 6. Okay, at this point I'll ask whether there's any questions. And please keep the questions, tied to the subject, closely to the subject matter. Alvena, did you want to ask? Or maybe since Edwin is closer, you take.
Can you explain a little more the contact, mind contact? I understand. I just can't put it together when it comes to the mind contact with all 3 sense, internal, external, consciousness, and mind contact.
It's somewhat tricky. Let me just see if I could figure it out. Because it seems, in the case of a visible form, it's pretty evident that the form comes into range of the eye, and then when there's consciousness of it, then there's a contact. But with mental objects, it's hard to see how they could come into range unless the contact has already taken place. I don't have an easy answer for that.
It's hard for me to put it together. I just couldn't really analyze it the way.
The only thing I could speculate is that maybe at a subliminal level, objects are constantly flowing through the stream of consciousness, and only on occasion the mind faculty will pick up,
like a fraction of a second.
and then it comes into as a clear and distinct object of consciousness.
Thanks.
So Bhante, it seems like consciousness is used interchangeably with cognition here, because it's not the consciousness that we usually think of, right? We're looking at feeling, which is coming after consciousness, and craving, which is coming even after that.
I see. So you're saying that the word that's translated as consciousness is used somewhat in the sense of cognition. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Right.
But how would you distinguish consciousness and cognition?
Well, when you talk about in layman's terms, when you say higher consciousness, you are assuming it is beyond feeling and craving. So I'm just comparing it from, that perspective.
I don't think let's not bring higher consciousness in, but ordinary consciousness. But just ordinarily we say, when we use the word consciousness, we think, is one conscious? Or if one is asleep or has fainted, he's unconscious.
Right.
So consciousness is just taken as kind of general state of awareness. But here, as you say, it's closer to a particular cognition, an act of knowing or experiencing. In that sense, you're right.
And Bhante, in your experience, like the first 3 sets of 6s are distinct. They are all 3. They're 6, like I as an object, external, internal, and it has a consciousness. But when you move to the next 3 sets of 6s, they are basically bringing all of them together. Contact comes together when all 3 come together, and then feeling. So they're not, and this I'm just asking because people may have had experience or you've had experience. Is there a distinction between feeling associated with just the I, external, internal, and consciousness? Or is it just one feeling?
I'm not quite sure I get the
So
question.
there are no 6 feelings. Basically, there are no 6 feelings. There's just one feeling.
No, there's 6 kinds, or at least the text distinguishes 6 kinds of feelings based upon the type of contact through which it arises, and the contact is determined by the distinction of the 6 sense faculties.
So craving also, you would
Yeah.
say, would be, okay, because I don't know, in one's personal experience, one would say that feeling is just feeling. It may
Yeah.
have nothing to do with either just seeing or either just, taste or either just hearing.
But I think if you reflect, you could see that feelings are distinguishable according to the sense domain through which they arise. If I see a visible form, it might give rise to feeling of pleasure, feeling of pain, or just a neutral feeling. What is true is that these 3 ways of distinguishing feeling, pleasant, painful, neutral, operate through all 6
Through all
senses.
6.
Yeah. So you could say whatever the sense faculty through which feeling arises, we could put that distinction aside and say we just have to look at feeling from the standpoint of pleasant, painful, neutral.
And neutral.
But the text sometimes will break up the feeling according to the sense domain, and then within each there are these 3 types of feelings. So in that way you get 18 types, 3 types through each of the 6 senses, 18 feelings. And Tsering, yeah.
Bhante, the question is on craving. Craving here, does it mean also craving for wanting and craving for not wanting?
Say again?
Craving here, does it mean also, normally when we say craving, we assume it with some pleasurable things,
Yeah.
experiences. Does it also here mean craving for not wanting undesirable situations or experiences?
Oh, I see. Okay, I see. The craving to avoid what's painful or undesirable. Is that what the point?
Yes, Bhante.
It could include that. The text itself doesn't go into an analysis of craving here. It just speaks of craving. But usually when the texts speak about the objects of craving, they speak about craving for, well, actually here it speaks about craving for the 6 sense objects. So this would be probably the craving to enjoy and to get possession of the 6 sense objects. But we could also see that, on reflection, say that is the craving to avoid what is unpleasant.
Thank you, Bhante.
Bhante,
Okay, please.
Bhante, are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Oh, you talk about the internal sense bases and the external. I never got the external.
You didn't get the external sense bases.
No, I never got it.
Yeah, those are the 6 sense objects. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, visible forms, sounds, odors, tastes, textures, and mental objects.
Oh, those are the external sense base?
Yeah.
I thought you said that the eye has a subtle
No,
substance. That's the internal.
those are the internal sense
I
bases.
thought the external would be like the earlobe or like
No,
something.
no. The external sense bases are the objects of the 6 sense faculties.
I got that, but I wasn't sure. I have to contemplate it.
Yeah. And Yochi Ivana, is that correct? Anna, I'm sorry, okay. Oh, somebody else? Stace?
Hi, Bhante. I don't remember if the sutta gets into how to practice these things, but in terms of sati,
Yeah.
how do we use mindfulness and the 6 sense bases?
I'm trying to think whether the sutta goes into it. think this sutta doesn't go into that, and that's a rather big question. So let's put it aside. Maybe at the end or in the discussion period we could take that up. Because I don't want to go into big areas now, but just questions that come up directly, based on what I said. So questions for clarification, let's say.
Yeah, I had a clarification about feeling.
Yeah.
So, as feeling pertains to, let's say, body contact. So if you brush up against a rope, the contact then produces a feeling that's purely tactile.
Yeah.
But there might also be an accompanying feeling of the mind saying, oh, I think that's a snake.
I see.
Is those two different kinds of feelings that could be produced by the same
Okay,
contact?
okay. Okay, you brush up, say, against a piece of cloth. Okay, so now there's a tactile sensation, and that will give, maybe it's a pleasant feeling.
Well, I mean, with a feeling of just, so if it's just purely tactile, tactile recognition, there's no feeling involved, that's still at the level of contact?
No, even when that cloth brushes up against the arm, there is the contact, which is this would be body contact, and there'll be a feeling that arises, conditioned by that contact. There is a feeling there. Okay, then the mind might recognize that contact and not thinking anything about the object. It might feel it if it's like a silky feeling. It might be a smooth feeling. So then it might be a pleasant feeling. Mm-hmm. So this is a pleasant feeling based upon